So I thought it'd be a good idea to explain how the new mode I've added to Typesetterer works. I'm going to skip kind of the going over the UI changes because it's going to add length to an already long video. So one of the first things to note is TIFFs are a lot easier to deal with than PSDs, at least for me on this side of things. So I actually have to create a copy of them. So if you'll see a prototyper folder in your PSD directory, and that's the TIFFs that I need to get information from. So there's three ways to enter text. There's the magic wand, box, and a line. A magic wand is basically if you had a magic wand selection and then you had text fit inside of it. The box is pretty much what Photoshop's text box is. And the line way of entering text actually fits your text along the length of the line. And in this case, it's what we want to go with. Although I need to split this because I've been doing them in different styles. So for the line, you click and you drag, and between the starting point and the end point, the line's made. And since this is a fresh install, I have to create some font styles. And that's what this dialog's for. So you don't really need to set anything aside from the font. But you know, name's nice. It'll show up in the bottom. And in this case, I need it to be white. And you might need to select this because by the default options are kind of weird. I have to kind of work that out. But that's a project for later. And as you can see, it fit the text to fit along the line. So the size kind of varies depending on the length of the line, sort of thing, and how the text fits on it. And in this case, I think it's fine. So once you hit OK, it actually makes that text layer in Photoshop. One of the things to note, though, is that it's kind of hard to get the right positioning for me, at least as far as the math goes. It's pretty close, but as you can tell on this, it's a little bit further between those two. So you're probably going to have to nudge it a little bit in the actual PSD. So this brings up the other style, which is the same one, just not bold. Set white again. So I kind of gloss this over in the first entering, but there's these two flags. The orange one is your font size, which you can drag to scale. You can enter it directly if you click on it. And if you click on the bar, it moves it in increments of 5. So these other flags, the purple one is the calculated size, so the size that it initially determines. And the kind of off purple is the size of the last textile size. So in this case, it's the size we want because we want it to be the same size. It's kind of, I don't know, an odd concept, I guess, but it's helpful in certain circumstances. So that makes it there, and it's kind of nice. But where it really works out is the magic wand. So it actually is a magic wand selection. So you can't click on well, you can click on the black parts, but as you can tell, it doesn't really give you what you want. I'm gonna create the style. So right now, this is kind of doing something I don't want it to do. I'll have to fix it later. This font in particular is a good demonstrator of what a comic font is. I guess I'll show you here. So I'll have it as not a comic font right now. So there's for uppercase fonts, a lot of the times the person who makes it will put in a different capital I. And that's kind of a comic thing where the only like flang where only the pronoun I should have flanged I parts, which is kind of hard to explain. But you know, in the case of this, there's a capital I here, and that's also flanged. So what it'll do is, if you set it as a comic font, it will go through and it'll replace all the non-pronoun I's with the non-flanged version. So you really only need to set it once, and it'll take care of it for the rest of it. So as far as this goes, it didn't really kind of detect a good break for this, and that's because it's kind of one word and everything. So I've added the option for one-click line breaking, where if you click on a letter, it'll split the line there. It adds a dash, and you can remove it if it's wrong by clicking on the first character. So in this case, I mean, that's a good break for the bubble at least. Oh, and I guess I should kind of explain as far as text sizes goes. So you have the option for setting a text size for font. It doesn't actually set any of the stuff to it, but it leaves you a flag to click on if you want it to be set to that size. In this case, that's a little big, but for the rest of them, it should be okay. So one of the other flags that gets added is this number 1, and that's the last size for the style you just typeset. And in this case, it won't really work. And the other thing here is that you might notice this 2 here. So it tries to fit your text to the box, and it'll give you a couple options. And it stops at 5. In this case, there's really not a whole lot you can break this on. So 1 line, 2 line kind of thing. And I think that's an okay break for this circumstance. For here, you have the 5 options. It actually, for English at least, it attempts to break on syllables a bit. It doesn't succeed sometimes, but it tries, and I think that's what matters. And at some point in time, I might actually have a better version of it. I kind of bastardized my implementation and all that, so that's one of those things that in the future maybe will be better. So this is a good bubble to kind of demonstrate the difference between the midpoints. So there's kind of 2 ways to calculate the middle of a bubble, at least as far as your shape is concerned. There's the bounds and the shape. So the bounds are if you took, and I have too many lines here going, but if you took the outline of this bubble and you just found the center of it, and a lot of the times that's fine, especially if you had like an oval bubble or a circle. I mean, a circle, a legitimate circle, the center is going to be pretty much the same deal. But a lot of the times what you want actually is the center of the shape. So what it does is it makes a lot of slices on each pixel pretty much, on each direction, and you can kind of average the midpoints to get a good center. So, and I wish I didn't have so much stuff here, but I mean, you can toggle the difference. There's the hotkey for it, and also you can specify those or view them in the keyboard stuff here. But yeah, I mean, in this case, I think the shape's better. The other thing to note is that the line breaker actually does add weight to punctuation. So it tries to end lines on, commas and periods and exclamation points and all that sort of stuff. Oh, and the other thing to explain, I guess, are what reduced selection by means. So this is the 0% is the actual full selection. A lot of the times you really don't want your text to fit on the very edges of it, and certain bubbles it'll actually go out past it because I don't calculate it based on like a slice kind of thing, but that's another story. So adding a percentage allows you to shrink the bubble by a relative amount, and most of the time, that's what you want. So in this case, I mean, 35%'s been working pretty well. So as you can tell, I mean, if you don't really care about the sizes, it's pretty quick. um, I would think that'd be an improvement to the current way of entering text. I'm going to kind of gloss over most of the stuff because, well, it'll take forever to typeset all this. There's another thing that it does when you use a magic wand selection, and that is it checks to see if it detects multiple bubbles. It's pretty accurate. It's not 100% accurate though. So if it does fail to detect it, so long as you're using a magic wand, you can go to the split bubble part and do it yourself. Now, the best way I could think of to split it is to kind of make a line that bisects the selection. So you click, your left click is your starting point, and your right click is the end point. After you make it, it will split the selection on that. And the different colors kind of tell you which selection's which. And as of right now, it's just it goes right to left. I'll have to change that. Ignore that. So this lets you kind of go through each bubble, which is kind of nice. And the other thing to kind of note, at least as far as the textile stuff goes, is I've added the option for relative leading. Yeah. So for certain fonts, the auto leading isn't good. And you might or might not know this, but Photoshop by default, the auto setting is 1.2 times the actual text size. So at 50 pixels, the space between the baselines is actually 60% or 60 pixels. And you can tell that, I mean, this is auto right now. And if I set this to 60, it stays the same. So for certain fonts, I mean, for a lot of the fonts, that's fine. But for certain ones, you kind of want like a 1-to-1 ratio, or a different one than that. And as far as Ventura editing goes, I mean, 1-to-1 is pretty good. So you can set a number between 0 and 2, and that'll be a ratio, and everything else it treats as a fixed amount. And I think as far as most of the stuff goes, I don't really need to go over much else. Although there's an option to switch to the old style of entering text with the kind of the overlay, and there's a hotkey so you can switch in between them, and I have to fix the kind of the positioning there. But it's kind of a nice little switch if you needed to enter stuff directly. But I think that kind of takes care of it, so thanks for bearing with me here.